Hey, good evening, everyone. David McGuffin here from Middleburg, Florida. It is Travel Talk Tuesday, February the 28th, 2023. I think this is the last day of the month. Boy, we've had a whirlwind weekend. Charlotte and I were in Denver over the weekend at a travel and adventure show. And when I arrived there on Friday, it was 4 degrees. It warmed up over the course of the next couple of days into the 50s. But boy, coming back here last night and arriving in Florida, 75 degrees and humidity hitting me in the face was a terrible change, I must say. But so the seasons are changing, I think. That's how things are going to go. Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit more about a Dublin City walking tour. I have a tour coming up around St. Paddy's Day, so just in a couple of 3 weeks in Dublin, and it's a high school band from here in Florida that I'm taking along with friends and family tour as well. And so I'm in the process of updating all my printed data and also all my audio tours and everything else. And so I came across, as many of you know, I came across last couple of months Google Earth Pro, and am just kind of experimenting with that and learning how to use that program. And since I went ahead and wrote the script for a walking tour, I decided today to zoom around on Google Pro, kind of like you're in a drone, and do the upper part of O'Connell Street all the way down to the General Post Office. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. I also mentioned on my promo and my printed stuff and emails that I sent out to you that we were doing a recipe for shepherd's pie, and I've got it right back. Oh, I already put it in the oven just while the thing was going on. So I've got it going, but I did not get to prepare it all to present to you. So by the time the show is over, we will pull it out of the oven and show it to you. But I promise I will share that recipe with you next week. It was really quick with frozen vegetables and everything else. I put it all together in about 20 minutes. So I'm pretty happy with it. And the first product taste of it seemed to be pretty good. So without further ado, let's talk about a little bit of Dublin walking tour, and especially up on O'Connell Street. If you were with me last week, or if you want to go back and look, remember we had about a 10-minute little spiel on the Garden of Remembrance up at the top of Parnell Square. And so we're going to begin where we left off with that and move on from there. There's a lot of pre-recorded audio, but you can see there on the left the Garden of Remembrance, which we talked about last week.
Of the Children of Lyra statue. You may need to climb.
And I'm not sure if I've got the volume correct on the audio, but I think it's pretty good.
Out the gate, turn left, walk to the corner, and turn again, then head downhill. About halfway down the block, on the left,
if you guys are watching on Facebook, maybe you can give us a thumbs up comment if you can hear the commentary.
1745, and now is Dublin's premier maternity hospital. Walk to the end of the block.
Okay, so thank you.
Street and turn left. Walk a couple of blocks back to O'Connell Street Upper, where you exited the Lewis tram a little earlier. Turn right on to O'Connell Street and look back at the obelisk in the middle of the intersection.
Let me stop it there for just a minute, because I've had a great time today kind of playing around with this program. I have a real drone, which I could fly around like this as well. However, it's kind of challenging to do in metropolitan areas, and people are watching you and all this kind of stuff. So This is the next best thing, and this is a Google Earth Pro. It's the program I'm using, so it's an app you download to your own PC or your Mac. It's not the Google Earth that you get online. Very similar, but I also have a controller, sort of a joystick that I purchased as well that I'm learning to manipulate everything with. So here we go with the Parnell Monument.
The obelisk at the top of O'Connell Street, soaring almost 60 feet in the air, is a tribute to Charles Stewart Parnell. Mr. Parnell was an Irish-born Member of Parliament in the 1880s. Known as a powerful landowner and an avid supporter of Irish Home Rule, and he was a promoter of independence from Britain. He was well liked, a charismatic orator, and an excellent politician. Parnell came very close to negotiating a peaceful Irish independence, but it was cut short by scandal. Parnell was outed carrying on illicitly with a mistress. Shortly after, he was run out of politics, and his quest for Irish independence died. Now turn around and walk downhill toward the west on O'Connell Street. If you can, try to get in the center median. That way you can see both sides of the street as we progress downhill. On the left, notice the famous Gresham Hotel. It has recently been renovated and now is a part of the Ria Plaza hotel chain. Since 1817, the Gresham has been known as one of Dublin's finest. Step inside for an expensive coffee, a tea, or a drink. Also, next to the Gresham is the old Savoy Cinema, where in the 1920s, Dubliners attended special events and movie openings. Now, it's the multi-cinemaplex offering 6 theaters. However, a bit of the old remains and tours of the historic theater are available. The Luas, Dublin's public transportation tram system, premiered in 2004, linking the suburbs with the city center. Here on O'Connell Street, you'll find it running down the middle of the street in the median. Luas is the Irish word for speed, and it is really fast and an economical way to get around the city. Down the street, looking west, is the Millennium Spire. This piece of art soars 390 feet up to the heavens. It's made of stainless steel and cost about €5 million to plan and direct. Construction began in the 1990s, and the goal was to have its premiere at the turn of the millennium. Unfortunately, that did not happen due to construction delays and budget overruns. It was finally completed and erected in 2004, gaining some creative nicknames such as the erection at the intersection, the stiffy on the liffey, the stiletto in the ghetto, and the poker near the croaker. The spire replaced an older monument dating back from the days of the British oppression. Nelson's Pillar was a 130 feet tall monument dedicated to Lord Horatio Nelson and his historic win at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. The pillar went up here on what was then known as Saxville Street in 1809. The pillar was dynamited to smithereens on Easter 1966, the 50th year anniversary of the Easter Rising. No one was ever arrested for the deed, but the IRA is suspected to be the culprit. O'Connell Street has changed drastically since my first march down the center. In 2005, I was a high school band teacher. We loaded up our marching band, flew across the Atlantic, and marched down O'Connell Street in Dublin's St. Patrick's Day Parade. 500,000 people lined the street, sometime 8 to 10 deep, between here and St. Patrick's Cathedral. O'Connell Street was 3 lanes at about 20 yards wide back then. Now it's as wide as a football field and 500 meters long. Notice the street is lined with department stores, tourist shops, and plenty of fast food joints. O'Connell Street has long been the main drag here in Dublin. In fact, it was second only to London in the British Empire when it came to riches, culture, music, and banking. It was once lined with marble Georgian buildings, home of the rich and famous, the who's who of the empire. O'Connell Street suffered a lot of damage in the War of Independence and the Civil War, and what you see here is mostly dilapidated brick rebuild dating from the mid-20th century. The one remaining structure from Dublin's golden era is the GPO, the General Post Office. This huge neoclassical building with iconic columns out the front was designed by a Brit, Francis Johnson, in 1877. It is much more to the Irish than just a post office. The GPO is a national symbol for the Irish because it was the site of the 1916 Easter Rising. Outside, notice the pillars are still pockmarked with English bullet holes. Have a look inside the historic old building. Much of it has been rebuilt after the 1916 fire, but the facade is the original. Today, it still is a working post office, although much larger than any I've ever visited. If you have time, try to visit the GPO Witness History Museum inside the GPO. It tells the fascinating story of the Easter Rising. On April 24, 1916, Easter Monday, a group of revolutionaries stormed the GPO. These young men were a part of some 12,000 active participants who had already taken over the strategic locations across Dublin, including Stephen's Green, where we'll end this tour. The GPO was a strategic location for Britain, with its postal service, telegraph, and communications reaching to the remainder of the empire. The revolutionaries barricaded themselves inside, took down the Union Jack, and raised the Irish green, white, and orange tricolor. Then they declared Ireland a free nation. Then Patrick Pearse stepped outside and read the proclamation of the Irish Republic. Pearse and 6 others declared themselves representatives of the provisional government of the Irish Republic and signed the proclamation. Battle went on for 6 days in the streets of Dublin. The 1,200 Irish revolutionaries were outnumbered by some 19,000 British troops. They didn't have a chance of success. The British set the GPO on fire, but the fire helped the rebels escape to nearby Moore Street. Pearse realized it was a lost cause, and he issued the surrender of the military council of the newly proclaimed Irish Republic. He did this to prevent the further slaughter of civilian population, and in hopes of saving our followers, now hopelessly surrounded and outnumbered. Initially, most Irish people were appalled by the death and destruction unleashed by the rebellion, and the defeat of the rebels were just jeered by onlookers as they were led through the streets of Dublin. In all, over 450 people were killed and 2,600 were wounded during the rising. Over half the people who died were civilians who had been caught in the fighting that occurred in the densely populated slums on Dublin's north side. All of those arrested were taken to Richmond's barrack for processing. The court-martials were held in the gymnasium building, and the 16 leaders of the rebellion were sentenced to death, including the 7 signatories of the proclamation. They were executed by firing squad at Kilmainham Jail, and their bodies were quickly and secretly carried across the Liffey and buried in a mass grave at Arbor Hill. On the first day, Patrick Pearse, Thomas MacDonagh, Tom Clark. On the second day, Edward Daly, Michael O'Hanrahan, Will Pearse, and Joseph Mary Plunkett. Then, after a pause, John McBride, Eamon Sinnott, Michael Mallon, Sean Houston, Con Colbert, and James Connolly, and Sean McDermott were all shot to death at Kilmainham Jail. The British cruel response, unfounded arrests, and needless execution soon turned the tide of the Irish public opinion. It wasn't long before the rebels were looked on as martyrs, not young and foolish troublemakers. Their deaths united the nation with a steady eye toward independence.
So I'm going to leave it at that on my narration and history, but I want to tell you that I've learned a lot in going through and kind of compiling all of this week or the last few weeks. And a few of us were over in Dublin back in November. And this church, which is the Sacred Heart Church near Collins Barrack on the right side of the Liffey River, is where Arbor Hill is. And this is us looking at Arbor Hill. And this area back here is where I alluded to the fact that to get rid of those patriots or those ruffians who had taken over the GPO, they were killed, shot, firing squad lined up at Kilmainham Jail, and then their bodies were quickly carried across the River Liffey over here and just dumped in this area in a mass grave right here. Now, as you can imagine, to the Irish, the Arbor Hill Cemetery and the area behind the Sacred Heart Church is very, very important to the Irish people, because that 1916 Easter Rising was the beginning of the quest. Well, was the culmination of the quest for the Irish independence. There had been many, many rebellions and quests for independence throughout the over 700 years that the English dominated the island of Ireland. But this is the final battle, the final straw. And the people used that when the young men there were shot by a firing squad. Ireland rallied around that as a rallying cry. And from 1916 to 1922, there was a huge battle to get the independence of Ireland. Next week, I'm going to pick up and do a great deal of walking tour in Dublin. We'll cover the other side of the Liffey River, the Temple Bar. We'll cover also Grafton Street, St. Stephen's Green, Trinity College, Dublin Castle, and Christchurch Cathedral and St. Patrick's Cathedral, along with, gosh, some of the Irish Famine Memorial and everything else. I've got a lot compiled, ready to go. Just my trip to Denver this weekend kind of cut it all short. So I'm going to leave it at that. We'll be back next week to finish up Dublin. I hope you will go with us on one of our Best of Ireland tours or our Taste of Ireland tours. We've got 4 departure dates throughout this year. And so look it up. We got May, June, August, and September. There are dates and everything's available. Okay, so until next week, your adventure starts right here with David McGuffin's Exploring Europe. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you later. Sláinte!